Goblin Maidens presents
A Night with Lady Gobitrescu.
I had always been fascinated by the supernatural and the unknown. This fascination was so strong that I decided to dedicate my career to it. After finishing college, I started to work as a freelance journalist, writing about ghost stories, unsolved mysteries, and urban legends. My passion allowed me to make a good name for myself in my field, and my latest project would be no different. I decided to investigate Lady Dorinta Gobitrescu. One day, while investigating at the public library, I found a picture of a strange woman dated October 30th, 1932. What caught my attention was not the picture itself, but the name and description that went with it. Her name was Lady Dorinta Gobitrescu, and the description claimed that she was an immortal goblin creature that devoured her lovers in order to remain young. The more I read, the more my interest grew. I couldn't wait to investigate further about this woman. However, my investigation didn't turn up anything. For weeks, I looked for any piece of information about Lady Gobitrescu and came up empty-handed. It was as if she never existed. I didn't know what to do. But one day, I was lucky. I was drinking in a bar after a long day of fruitless research. I was looking at my notes and Lady Gobitrescu's picture. When an old man sat in the bar stool next to me, he ordered a whiskey and then noticed the picture.
Ah, Lady G. I wonder how is she doing nowadays?
He said. "What? You know her?" I asked, perplexed.
Sure do. I used to be her gardener, back when I was young.
He answered. "So, you claim that Lady Gobitrescu lives in her mansion even nowadays. Is that right?" I asked.
Yes, sir.
The old man replied.
She even sends me a present every year on my birthday.
I couldn't believe it. There had to be some truth in the rumors about her. "Do you know where I can find her?" I asked the old man.
I can give you a phone number if you'd like.
The old man replied.
But let me tell you this. She's not a woman. She's a devourer of men.
"Yeah, I've heard the stories." I responded with a coy smile.
They're not just stories, boy.
He answered, becoming suddenly serious.
She is kind to her servants, but I served her for 50 years and saw her change lovers as easily as her dresses, but the thing that never changed was she never grows old.
I wrote down the number, thanked the old man, and decided to try calling her. I hoped that she would accept my offer of an interview. But my hopes were crushed when I heard her voice on the phone. Lady Gobitrescu denied my request, telling me that she wasn't interested in speaking with me. But I didn't give up. I kept on calling her for days until she finally accepted.
"Well, I've changed my mind. Yes, I'll do the interview with you,
Lady Gobitrescu said.
but there's a condition."
"Of course. Anything, I just want to meet you." I replied.
"The interview will have to happen in my house, and you'll have to come alone. I don't like strangers snooping around my property, understand?"
I thought about it for a moment and decided it was worth the risk. After all, it was just one woman. And what could possibly happen? I decided to go ahead. "Yes, I'll be there in a week," I said. "May I ask what made you change your mind?"
"Let's just say that I have an appetite for men who try hard to get what they want."
I hung up the phone and started to plan my trip. I would need a few things before I went. A map, a cell phone, a camera, a notebook and pencil, and my car. I had to drive for hours until I reached the outskirts of the city where Lady Gobitrescu's mansion was located. The weather was nice, but suddenly it started raining. My old sedan slipped in the muddy road. I managed to pull over and tried to call Lady Gobitrescu to let her know that I would be late. But to my surprise, my cell phone had no signal. The storm was too strong and the wind blew so hard that I couldn't get out of the car. So I had to wait it out. I waited for a few hours. The car had gotten stuck in the mud, so I had to get out and walk. When I reached the mansion, I knocked on the front door. It opened and a butler greeted me. He was tall, skinny, and dressed in a black uniform. His eyes were red like he hadn't slept in a while. He let me inside and showed me where a changing room was. I took off my wet clothes and put on a towel. Then I dried myself off, put on some dry clothes that the butler had left for me, and met with him again.
Follow me.
The butler said.
Lady Gobitrescu has ordered some refreshments for you.
He led me to the dining hall. When I entered, I couldn't believe my eyes. A banquet had been set up for me. The dining table was filled with the most exotic dishes, and there were bottles of wine lined up in front of me. A single chair was set for me on my end of the table, while a double seat was on the other end. A note was on it that read, "Wait for me." I did as I was told and ate as much as I could. 30 minutes passed when I heard the loud tapping of heels on the marble floor. I turned around to see the door open and a woman enter. The first thing I noticed was her height. She was so tall, she had to bend down to fit through the door. Then I was able to see her figure. Lady Gobitrescu was an absolute beauty. Her face was shaped like a heart, with black hair, yellow eyes that sparkled like jewels, and a pointed chin. Her skin was pale green, and her ears were pointy, but her nose was small and button-like. Her lips were red as apples, curved in a seductive smile as she set her eyes on me. She looked like a high-class lady dressed in elegant clothes. A white dress covered her body, but the cleavage exposed her ample breasts. Her black gloves covered her big yet refined hands, and an expensive-looking necklace adorned her slender neck. A black garbo hat that blended with her hair topped off her look. My mouth dropped open and I was unable to speak. Lady Gobitrescu closed the door behind her and approached the table. Her heels tapped as she walked and her hips swayed back and forth, making my dick grow slightly hard. I stood up as quickly as I could, hoping that my erection wouldn't be noticeable.
Good evening, Mr. Summers. I apologize for my lateness. I am Lady Dorinta Gobitrescu.
Good evening, ma'am. I should be the one apologizing. I had some problems getting here. Lady Gobitrescu smiled as I returned the greeting. The sound of her voice was as sweet as honey, deep, rich, yet feminine. I felt shivers run down my spine with every word she spoke.
It's no problem. Please be seated, Mr. Summers. Make yourself at home.
I nodded and sat back down as Lady Gobitrescu did the same. Her double seat allowed her to sit comfortably as she poured herself a glass of wine. I took a close look at her. I had seen many beautiful women before, but none had ever compared to Lady Gobitrescu. Her pale green skin sparkled as she drank from her glass. I couldn't take my eyes off of her.
So tell me, Mr. Summers.
Lady Gobitrescu began.
I know you're a journalist and want to write a story about me. Why don't you ask me your questions?
Her voice echoed in the hall as she spoke, deep and seductive. I stuttered for a moment until I could remember what I was there for. I'll do that. First of all, what can you tell me about the rumors people have spread about you? Are they true? Lady Gobitrescu laughed as she poured herself another glass of wine. Her long fingers were wrapped around the bottle, and couldn't help to imagine how that hand would feel holding my shaft. She brought the glass to her lips and took a sip of wine before answering.
Most of them are false, Mr. Summers.
Lady Gobitrescu said with a smile.
I assure you I am no monster, and if I am, it is not because I'm immortal.
I couldn't help to notice the way she smiled at me. Then, are you married? I asked.
Well, I'm afraid I'm a spinster.
Lady Gobitrescu replied as she put her glass down.
But I don't think it is for lack of trying. My problem is that I am too choosy.
I couldn't argue with her there. I'd never seen a more perfect woman. You are beautiful, my lady, I said, hoping that I wouldn't offend her. Her smile broadened and her cheeks blushed.
Thank you, Mr. Summers. You are not bad yourself.
Lady Gobitrescu, you are too kind. She laughed as she played with her glass.
Call me Dorinta, Mr. Summers.
She said.
I don't think you need to be formal with me.
Thank you, Dorinta. And call me Austin. We talked for a while longer. I asked her questions and she told me about herself. I gathered what little I could about her, and I could tell that she wanted to know more about me instead. Suddenly, she stood up, grabbing her glass in one hand and a new bottle of wine in the other.
May I ask you to accompany me to my quarters?
Dorinta said, smiling.
I would like to have a more intimate interview with you.
Listen to the full uncensored version at Goblin Maiden's Patreon. Link in the description below.